Hey guys, in today's book to screen, I'm going to be talking about Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, starring Sophie Lowe, Michael Soka, Peter Gadiot, Emma Rigby, and Naveen Andrews. Loosely based on Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Once Upon a Time in Wonderland follows Alice as she searches for her one true love and tries to save Wonderland from the clutches of the evil Red Queen and Jafar. The television series was 13 episodes long and aired on ABC. So before I actually get going with my thoughts on the television series, I am going to warn that this is going to have a lot of spoilers in it most likely. So if you have not seen Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, then I suggest you do not continue watching. And also, if you've not seen the original show, Once Upon a Time, I'm not really going to be spoiling much of that. I don't feel the need that I need to even talk about that, so I'm not going to sit and spoil anything major from the current season of Once Upon a Time. It's all going to be pretty much just focused on Wonderland. So my overall impressions, the best way to think about Once Upon a Time in Wonderland is to kind of think of it as a companion series to Once Upon a Time, or a mini-series of sorts. Just judging from what the creators had planned for this series, they always kind of made it sound like it was just intended for one season. And we got a beginning, a middle, and an end. And their plan, from just how they were talking about stuff like at Comic-Con or magazine interviews, I was always under the impression that if Wonderland did really good, that they would continue to do the series, but it wouldn't be called Wonderland anymore. It would be called, like, Once Upon a Time in Oz, or Once Upon a Time in Neverland, or whatever land they want to go to. So that was always kind of my impressions. And so that's the great thing about Wonderland, since they kind of always intended it to be just, one season, you do get that good wrap up from start to finish, and there's not anything left hanging, I don't think. Overall, I did enjoy the show for the most part. It had its cheesy moments, it had its silly moments, but when it got to the really dramatic parts, I think it excelled at that. The humor was fantastic, especially from the native parts. It did get a bit too whimsical on occasion. Wonderland is notorious for being a very whimsical place, but sometimes I think the whimsy kind of stretched a bit too far, and just a little too weird sometimes. But like Lewis Carroll's original story, you do get that whimsy and the good humor, and just this cast of characters who are just so random and weird sometimes. I loved what the show was able to take from Lewis Carroll's stories. Not every single detail was drawn into the television series, but if you've read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland or Through the Looking Glass, then there'll be a lot of elements that you recognize. Especially a lot of word choices. Lewis Carroll, in his stories, he was famous for kind of just making up random words, and words that just made no sense. Just a lot of just mumbo jumbo, and you would just have to kind of figure out what it meant in the context of the story. And sometimes his made-up words just made no sense at all, which was part of the whimsy of Wonderland. So I liked that the television series kind of brought all that in and was kind of paying tribute to Lewis Carroll in some ways. But yeah, even though I did overall enjoy the series, I do think that on occasion it was underwhelming, especially the season finale, or the series finale I should say. I really felt like the series finale was kind of underwhelming and let me down in some ways, and I think I had just so much more expected from the series finale. The series itself kind of started off a bit slow. It was kind of weird. I was often very confused with the whole timeline element of the show. If someone can explain it to me, please explain it to me, because it kind of makes no sense to me. If you watch Once Upon a Time, there's this whole element of a curse that was in the fairy tale world, and the evil queen did a curse, and all the characters have been trapped in this place called Storybrooke for 28 years with no memories, and so you have that element you gotta consider when you're watching Wonderland, which is only kind of very briefly mentioned in the very first episode in some ways, because we see the Knave of Hearts in Storybrooke, so how long has he actually been in Storybrooke? And then the next thing we see the Knave of Hearts going to Victorian London. And so it's Victorian London that I'm not quite sure what the deal is. The producers of the show kind of made it sound like you gotta think of this Victorian London is not the real Victorian London. This is like an imagined Victorian London where it's in the current day, but it's like an alternate universe is the best way to describe it. An alternate universe of Victorian London that's running parallel with Storybrooke. And plus then you have Wonderland, which is running parallel with all this. So there's all these timelines and it's all very confusing. I'm not even sure if I'm describing it very well. What I think Wonderland did very good was how character focused it was. Once Upon a Time itself is very character focused, but it has a lot more of plot, very interconnecting plot lines going on. Whereas Wonderland, you don't get a million zillion plots going along. You just basically have kind of this one story of Alice searching for her one true love and trying to defeat the Red Queen and Jafar. You don't have this story, this story, this story, this story. It's just kind of all one big story, really. So it's a very character-based show, which I enjoyed. You really got to know these characters pretty well for the most part. Even a lot of just minor characters that are only on for maybe 1 or 2 episodes or something. You really get to know them quite a bit compared to, I think, Once Upon a Time. And you guys, where was the Mad Hatter? Where was the Mad Hatter, aka Jefferson? If you watch Once Upon a Time, you know that Jefferson was kind of a big part of season 2 and a little bit of season 3. And so I was always under the impression that somehow the Mad Hatter would be a big deal in the television series for Wonderland. And even at Comic-Con, the writers kept getting, questions about, is the Mad Hatter gonna make an appearance in Wonderland? And they kept saying, oh, we hope that we can get Sebastian Stan, but he's so busy right now with Captain America. And so I've always wondered, now that the show is over, where the Mad Hatter would have fallen in the plotline of events, because what would have changed, and is there a character that would not have appeared in the show? I'm almost wondering if the character of Lizard would have been replaced with the Mad Hatter. Lizard is like a past fling of the Knave of Hearts, so I almost wonder if that was maybe a part intended for Jefferson, maybe? I don't know. But yeah, I'm very curious what they had in mind for his character. And the Mad Hatter is a very big character in the Alice in Wonderland universe. And in most adaptations, he's in it. Okay, so I'm going to get into some quick thoughts on the main cast, starting with Sophie Lowe, who played Alice. I really thought Sophie Lowe was an excellent choice. She really looked the part, and I found her very believable as Alice. She has her moments where you can see her as a little girl. There's the moments where you can see her as this kick-ass heroine, and I believed all those different aspects of her. And I really thought her acting was terrific. She just had some really great emotional moments that were so perfect. And then we have Michael Socha, or is it Michael Socha? Either way, he played the Knave of Hearts, aka Will Scarlet from Robin Hood's Merry Band. Will was my favorite character far and away. I think he had the best character development and plot line out of every other character on the show. And he had the most interesting relationships. I think him and Alice had the best relationship out of everyone, even Alice and Cyrus. I'll get to Cyrus in a minute, but just kind of talking about Alice and Will, they had a much better dynamic and chemistry going on, and they just had this really great brother-sister relationship, which I adored. And I remember when Michael Socha was cast as the Knave of Hearts, because I had previously been watching Being Human, the UK show, with him in it, and he played a werewolf on that show, and I loved him on Being Human, so I was pretty excited that he got cast in Wonderland. Then there's Peter Gadiot, or Peter Godot, I'm not sure about his name either, who played Cyrus, who is Alice's love interest, and he is a genie. And that's basically how Alice and Cyrus meet. She's on one of her trips to Wonderland, and she gets into the bottle, and there's Cyrus waiting for her, and it's like they have this instant connection and romance going on. It's like instant love in some ways. But their relationship, considering that the show is marketed to be this epic love story, and that Alice, for the first half of the season, is basically searching for him, we don't really get all these great scenes between Their scenes together are very far in between, so you never really get to see them connect. But I do think Peter Gadiot, I'll just pronounce his name that way for right now, I do think his acting was fantastic. I think he did best when he was by himself, really. I liked his scenes with Jafar and the Red Queen and the Sultan. And I loved how he was always trying to get out of his prison cell. I even really enjoyed his flashbacks too. I think for the most part I kind of liked him away from Alice in some ways, because I almost feel like when he was finally with Alice it took away from his character in some ways. And then we have Emma Rigby as the Red Queen, aka Anastasia. And it's implied that Anastasia is maybe the stepsister of Cinderella. There was never any confirmation on that. I think Emma Rigby was a fantastic choice. Her acting was really great. I loved, she had these moments where she was haughty and prim and proper, but then underneath all that you have this really great emotion coming out of her, and you don't really get to see that until kind of the halfway point of the show, really. But once you do get to see the real Anastasia come out, it's just so great. And I'd probably say that Anastasia was my second favorite character. She wasn't among my favorite characters at first, but she quickly developed into one of my faves. And then there's Naveen Andrews as Jafar, and I think, way back when Once Upon a Time was first on the air, I think Jafar was a choice everyone was waiting to pop up, and I think Naveen Andrews was the automatic pick for Jafar because Once Upon a Time is created by the creators of Lost, and Naveen Andrews was in Lost, so I think it was kind of a given that Naveen Andrews would pop up as Jafar. It was just a question of when he would pop up in the universe, and so I guess it was Wonderland. I really loved Naveen Andrews as Jafar, just a match made in heaven. Jafar was kind of this really crazy character. He was over the top on occasion, but I loved the over the top nature of him. I didn't like Jafar that much at first, like his appearance. I really hated his appearance at first. He has this really horrible wig on, and I didn't like his clothes that much, and so fortunately by the halfway point of the show they changed that up, and he looked a lot better. He looked more like how he should, I think. And then outside of the main cast we have some minor characters. There's the White Rabbit. I love the White Rabbit. He was so adorable. He was voiced by John Lithgow. I think the animation for him was excellent. I never really felt like his animation was very fake. Just talking about the CG in general for the show, I really disliked the CG on the show. That's the one negative thing. It's horrible, you guys. Even on Once Upon a Time has some pretty bad CG moments, but there's a lot of times that the CG is really fantastic and great, and sometimes I can't even tell it's CG. But on Wonderland, I could tell for the most part what was CG and everything, and sometimes things just looked very flat, like there wasn't shadow, and that's how you could tell it was CG. But yeah, the White Rabbit was the one perfect piece of CG, I think. I'm just gonna rant about the CG right now, kind of get away from the cast for just a second. Why did Wonderland have to be in CG exactly? Couldn't they have just filmed out in some woods somewhere? I don't understand why they used all that CG and just wasted the budget like that when it was so horrible. Anyway, back on track, there was also the Jabberwocky, which was so cool. I believe the actress's name was Peta Sargent. Oh my gosh, she was like this 80s glam rocker. She was so fantastic. I loved her and her mannerisms. She was very lizard-like and snake-like. She just had these little ticks, and the way she moved her head and her body, it was just so great. And the show ended, Jafar he put a blade through her chest and just pinned her back up against a wall, and I was saddened that we didn't get to see the conclusion of her story, like what happened to the Jabberwocky. They just show her right there for 5 minutes at the beginning of the series finale, and then that's it. So kind of concluding all this, how is this all going to tie into the Once Upon a Time world? There's already been announcements that Michael Soka, the Knave of Hearts, is going to be a series regular on Once Upon a Time. They haven't announced if Anastasia is going to be part of the cast, or she might just be in an episode or two. I feel like they have to kind of conclude Anastasia in some way and kind of draw back that connection that she is the stepsister of Cinderella. But yeah, the Knave of Hearts he's going to be back on That'd be great to see him back with Robin Hood's gang, since Robin Hood is kind of a series regular now. Also, the series finale, Jafar got placed in the genie lamp, and just like the cartoon, you know, at the very end of Aladdin, Jafar gets placed back in the genie ball because he wants ultimate power. His ambition gets the better of him. So I think that's going to come back at some point in Once Upon a Time. I don't think the creators are going to sit and waste their use of Jafar. I think Naveen Andrews will definitely come back as Jafar, and they'll kind of maybe conclude his story then. Plus, you know, Jafar is part of the Aladdin story. What two important characters were not mentioned at all in Wonderland? That would be Aladdin and Jasmine. So I feel like Aladdin and Jasmine have got to be introduced at some point on Once Upon a Time. And when that happens, that's when Jafar's coming back. I don't know if he would be a villain for like a whole season. He might be a villain for half a season, maybe. But yeah, some concluding thoughts. The series finale, like I said, was underwhelming. We were given these hints like, oh, there's gonna be a big epic battle, and Alice even gives like this big like battle cry and rallies all the troops, and then that kind of goes nowhere, and it was kind of disappointing. The whole finale just felt really rushed, and there were elements that I liked, but then elements that I really hated, and I was just really disappointed because before the finale, the previous 3 or 4 episodes were so brilliant, and I just had such high hopes for the show that things were really picking up and we were getting this epic finale, but finale was just kind of boring to me. But yeah, in some ways I think the finale was predictable. We knew Alice and Cyrus were going to have their happy ending. I wasn't quite sure about Will and Anastasia, if they would have a happy ending. I was thinking Anastasia was going to stay dead, but she came back, so I'm actually glad that Will and Anastasia had a happy ending. Like I said, Jafar got placed in a bottle. I had guessed in the very first episode that Jafar was going to get placed in a bottle. The one thing about the finale that just really hit me, I loved the hug between Alice and Will. Because, like I said, they had this really great brother-sister relationship. They spent that entire season together. They were together more than Alice and Cyrus, for God's sake. And so that was just so emotional, them saying goodbye to each other, not knowing when they're going to see each other again. It was just very sweet. So yeah, have you guys seen Once Upon a Time in Wonderland? What did you think? Do you also watch Once Upon a Time? If so, how do you think some of these elements from Wonderland are going to kind of filter into the main show? So that's it, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you liked this book to screen, you may like these. Bye, guys.